Hey guys, welcome out there. The BALLBUSTERS, episode 44. 84, sorry. Yeah. It's been one of those mornings. Happy 4th of July out there to all you Americans. We celebrate our independence, that low-down murdering scum, Ingles. Let's ship it over to the master of ceremonies, who is a descendant of that murdering scum. Mr. Nathan Oakley, sir.
Good evening.
And good night. That was one hell of an introduction, I'd have to say.
Well, what do you want? You just call me a descendant of murdering scum.
Yeah, I know. That I kind of put you on the spot. I'm just teasing.
Wait, what?
Outrage. We're still salty about it now.
I was still listening to the intro. I missed a very weird part.
You didn't miss anything. I made a derogatory comment about the homeland.
Which one?
Which one? Good one.
You believe in all that stuff? Is that all true, do you think?
Say again?
Is it all true? It's such a long time ago, is it? When was Independence Day? Is it? Maybe I'm mixing my dates up. Is it 12/15? Is that what it is?
It's 2nd of July. It's in 2 days.
Yep, 4th of July. Yeah, that's another story. I think it was an okey doke, by the way. That's my personal thoughts after researching it a bit. I'm not a scholar on the subject, but I think there's an okey doke in there somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Question everything, even history.
Oh, come on, fill me in because I'm into that stuff.
Dude, it's Independence Day in 2 days.
For America.
Yeah.
Not for Netherlands.
At least we didn't get blown up in that movie.
You're talking about the movie? Oh, boy.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're off to a rip-roaring start. What's going on out there? I've been hearing some nonsense out on the wires, I'll tell you that much. Getting dumber and dumber, those ball-tards, it sounds like. Well, I guess they have to. They got no way out.
You're there for one of them. Boy, Mal.
Yeah, that was preposterous ludicrousness, absurdity. I tried to wrap, it's hard to wrap your head around like insane incoherence. I tried to do it on the fly. You know, once he said it, I was like, wait a second, where's he trying to put it together? Where's he going with this? Right? And yep, I knew it. I tried to, you know, put it in some type of coherent way, and I think I got it, and he admitted he was doing it. What was he doing? He was attempting. Go ahead.
He was using the flat Earth to make his claim, and using both a claim of a curved surface and a claim of having parallel lines to the surface when you're drawing out what they call horizons. Just a line that's horizontal from your position, but parallel with the ground. And 10th Man caught him and just called him a double speaker. And once it was all broken down between you and 10th Man, he had to admit that, no. In the one instance when I'm measuring things parallel to the ground, I'm assuming a flat Earth.
I think it was a little more insane than that, wasn't it? Because what he tried to do, it was so convoluted. I was trying to pick out where he was going with. It was innuendo. That's another thing. They just don't come out and say it. They jumble all kind of different concepts into it, and you're trying to ferret your way through them live. And it's difficult trying to battle that level of Dunning-Kruger, but I finally got it, right? He was trying to manifest a non-visible horizon, which doesn't exist, by the way, from a dip angle correction. that doesn't exist either, not in this context. So that's what he was doing. So he's trying to manifest a non-visible horizon from a dip angle correction. That was hilarious. And once I got it, I had to confirm it with him. I was trying to get in there and confirm it. And all of a sudden I said it and he said, yes, that was it, man. That was all over.
Yeah, he's manifesting, as you put it, a non-visible horizon to make a correction from.
Yes.
A claim of the dip correction to a visible horizon that isn't geometric with a bent line to it.
Yes. Folks, if you don't know what we're talking, let me just get the folks out there. They probably know what we're talking about since they're watching both of our shows. So this was Friday on FED, Flat Earth Debate. I think, was it in the after show or did this? I think it was the after show. Yes.
It was. I mean, it's one of the longest shows ever. It was almost 5 hours long in the end because we were hanging around forever for Hoymar to turn up. But when he eventually did, we were discussing it with him for a good chunk of time. I trimmed out a 10-minute section of it just when he admitted it was an assumption of Earth being flat. As his get out for the problem, as two people, you and 10th Manor, firing on all cylinders, hitting him from both sides. And he had to give at some point, and his give was to say, oh yeah, well, obviously I'm doing it on a flat Earth then when I do it that way, the only way, i.e. drawing out parallel lines, establishing horizontal, all the things he had to describe with a non-geometric excuse for describing them. He's got a bent line to a non-geometric refracted horizon. Yeah, like I say, I trimmed out a 10-minute section just where you could get the full context of him admitting, well, no, I've got to assume a flat Earth. And I'm going, well, of course you have. It's the only way to do it.
Yes, sir. There's no way out. Any direction they go, they get flamethrown. And you can feel, it's palpable. Listening to your show, I can feel it in the background that just have them say one thing, sort of concrete, and you guys are just, chomping at the bit. Yeah, it's palpable. I can feel it.
Sounds to me, I didn't hear this now because I didn't see the after show, but it sounds to me like what he was doing was using the basics of that Davis sextant manual diagram that me and Tent have shown a few times, where there's an angle from the observer's eye line on the ship to the globe's mathematical horizon underneath the water. And then the dip correction brings that up to the actual horizon. And then you do a height of white correction to bring the vertex down to the water. But that is different from what I'm hearing there. That's different from what Ruhif has been trying to claim with John. Ruhif has been trying to claim that the dip correction, the dip correction is a correction from the horizon, which is a geometric horizon, globe's geometric. That's the one we see, basically, to bring that up to the eye line, so that the horizontal is at the eye line. And when he was corrected a bit about it by John or whatever, he then said, no, actually, the height of eye correction is to bring the vertex down to the feet. It's not. None of those are correct. His dip correction involves a mathematical globe horizon that is not visible because it's only mathematical. And the height of eye correction brings the vertex down to the surface of the water underneath the boat. Like, the whole point of everything they're doing, it seems to be to do their best to avoid the actual surface of Earth, water and land, as the horizontal baseline. Because when it comes to the marine sextant, that's what they have to have.
He was trying to do that, but the problem he was having was he was starting with the non-geometric refracted horizon. So everything you've described was what he was attempting to do. It was attempting to do it with a misapprehension of which horizon he'd have to start with to do that. To correct from anything that's got an angle acquisition, it's got to be a geometric horizon for them to do it. As you rightly point out, when Ruhif does it, that's how he's doing it, right? And we just laugh at him and ask him how that geometric horizon's working out, because you can't see it in 2020. Well, this guy started, as I say, Weimar with the refracted horizon, but then started to semi-give that explanation that you've given. I stepped in. I'm like, you don't even understand your own claim, because to be correcting this and calling it a dip angle correction, it's got to be something with a straight line in it to correct from it, i.e. the geometric horizon that we don't see. Now, I had to explain that to him. I think it was 25 times, Brian. I'm not even joking.
Well, sorry.
Did you hold on? Did you bother to tape? I'm getting some feedback here. That's all right. Did you bother to tape the rubber ducky example that just blows all that? I don't know where they got the dip angle from. They should have never put that in celestial navigation, but I digress. Did you tape the rubber ducky?
Yeah, so the rubber ducky section's right after the bit that I trimmed out. So he's been caught out, and then he moves on to suggesting that it's not going to be capable of working if the ground is flat. Everyone bursts into laughter. Then it goes on to, after the clip that's just come out today, you explaining that, well, what happens if I chuck you out of the boat onto a life raft with a sextant? And I think he initially was like, we won't work. It can't be done.
I don't think you guys that can feel the power of that rubber ducky sextant. I don't think people have grasped that just yet. I stopped the whole discussion with that.
Grasp it. I wanted to use that shortcut about a year ago, 18 months ago. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Brian wouldn't allow me. I was like, I don't worry about dip correction. It's not even that important. Just do it without it from any level, you know. And then, oh, right, okay, well, if we've got to do dip correction, I'll just start on the sea level then, because I'm lazy and I don't want to argue about it. I was like, no, it's very important. At the time, I was like, ah, whatever. 18 months later, here we are, arguing about dip.
Yeah, I didn't say you guys don't understand the rubber ducky example. I'm just saying I don't think you feel the power of the rubber ducky sextant argument.
Yeah,
That's what
I
I'm
understand the power.
I feel it.
There's no dip if you're in a dinghy. Right, let's say you're holding the sextant, you're a foot above the deck. There's no dip correction to do, right? There's no because it's your height above the deck. It's your height of eye correction. If you're on the deck in the dinghy, there's nothing to correct for. So where they're going to weasel in their geometric correction and their geometric consideration, if there isn't a correction. Likewise, if you're doing it with a bubble sextant, but previously when they do that, I know you didn't like it either, QE, because it gives them a Weasley opportunity to move the discussion away from the ground.
Yep.
Now, obviously, in this instance, they're moving away from the ground because this is our positive claim. They want to get our positive claim of a flat surface necessitated by all of these measurements well away from the ground, and then they'll argue about it in the air, which is what you get when you debate with them about a bubble sextant. Chucking them into the sea in a rubber dinghy or rubber ducky example is very, very much more a powerful argument, because then they're stuck there, aren't they?
Yes.
On the ground in a dinghy with no dip correction and no geometric horizon to claim they need correcting from. They're screwed.
Yes, they're screwed immediately. That stops the whole discussion on height of eye correction and what it is, or what they call it, dip angle correction. Like I said, it's poor terminology, whoever started that nonsense. But anyway, I'm glad they did, because then they can start explaining what the dip correction is, and then I just hit them with the rubber ducky sextant, and it's a belly laugher. It's over. And it shows without a shadow of a doubt they have no idea with what they speak of.
Height of eye correction, for me, it's not intrinsically a part of celestial navigation. As we mentioned, bubbles and cross staffs from ancient times. What height of eye correction is a correction for if you're going to use an optical device, which is strapped onto the sextant, to create a level. That's what it's doing. It's using the geometry of the lens and the relationship for the lens to the limited deck as opposed to the open sky. And it's that relationship the height of I corrects for to attain a level. That's what it's for. It's not necessarily actually, you use it if you want to attain a level in celestial navigation like that, but it's not actually a part of the methodology of celestial navigation per se, would be my point.
Well, welcome, Adam.
Afternoon, evening.
Go ahead, Brian. I know I stopped you earlier. I know you had something to say on the topic. Go ahead.
No worries. The depth correction and height of I correction were once the same thing. But what's happening is the ballers are equivocating with history. They're flipping between the time when they were once the same thing to now where they're two different things. They're two different things now because they added globulus into celestial navigation. And depth correction became something that involved a geometric horizon, a globe's geometric horizon. So they're equivocating between the two things, between the two times in history. And they do it interchangeably, and most people don't notice it because most people on the flat earth side haven't caught up yet with the argument. They haven't learned it.
Yep.
So I've heard them do that. The reason, just for Nathan, the reason I was so adamant about the height of I correction being so important, because then you're referencing the actual Earth, the mean sea level, horizontal baseline that Earth has.
Right.
You're referencing that, and that's for hundreds and thousands of miles often. That the horizontal distance has to be, and that's why the ballers will not address it, and that's why I was so adamant that it was so important.
You're spot on, Brian.
I mean, back then I didn't get it. Now I do, but I agree with you completely. It's just when you're talking about this, and this is why it's now progressed into the discussion it has from their side of the fence, because there is an opportunity if you've got a correction, turn the correction from all of the measurements using straight lines and angles into one of them being a tangent line. That's the only opening it offers them. But I don't know if QE said this already, but I'm good with that. What's the tangent to? Again, Hoymar got a taste of this yesterday. Like, well, tangent to what? And he couldn't answer the dumbfounded silence with me shouting at him. Tangent to what? Or tangent to a geometric horizon that we don't see. I'm good with that. Dip correction to a geometric horizon. Yeah, how's that geometric horizon working out for you, Roofy?
Yeah, you like that geometric horizon. Go ahead, Adam. I know you wanted to chime in.
No, it was just to support Brian's position. I don't know. When me and Brian look at the maths, we view it in a different but similar way. The crux of it, in terms of the height of I correction, is whether you're bringing it down or bringing it up. It doesn't really matter. You're not bending it to the edge of a geometric curve to create a tangent for some kind of weird adjustment that you'd have to do at that, which would require distance, your tangent, the knowledge of that, for it to be relevant to apply it to a sphere. The whole purpose of it, even with a bubble sextant, is to create a parallel surface to the surface that your return journey, your circles of equal altitude will be plotted on, that flat surface. This is why when we caught the guy, when you was talking rubber ducky, and then I said, let's go up into the sky with a plane, he had to admit, what's the purpose of creating with the bubble sextant? It was to match the surface that you're going to navigate upon. And that's where we got in. I have to assume it's a flat plane that he's doing all this on.
Can we not call it going rubber ducky or whatever you just said? I just want it to mean something. If you say that, the guy in the audience won't know what you mean. Whereas if you say, once I put them on the water in a rubber dinghy, I know that's what you mean. I know that's what QE meant.
No, I meant no. I meant an actual rubber ducky life preserver. No, that's my argument. You ain't taking that away.
Yeah, because if you were in a dinghy, Nathan, I wanted to say that you'd still need to have to do height of I correction in a dinghy because you're still a couple of feet above the water.
No, that's fine. Okay, I just didn't hear the life preserver. I don't want it to turn from a guy who's adamantly adequately described as being on the water in a life preserver versus a rubber duck in the water. Just because it's rubber ducky life preserver, that'll get shortened to rubber ducky, and then no one will know what we're talking about.
Oh yes, they will. I explain it very well. I'll tell you what. It's got teeth.
Adam just said, when you've got him rubber ducky. That's how he phrased it. When you've got him rubber ducky.
Well, I used it because when you'd got him rubber duckied, you'd got him on the surface of the water. That was the point. And the point of when you draw the plane, create a plane higher above with a bubble sextant, whatever, it's emulating that surface. When you are on the surface, that you know has to be flat, because that's how you're going to calculate your return journey, fix your position. All the purpose is to model that flat surface, that if you are with your eye on the surface, buoyant with a rubber duck, that's what you're trying to replicate at whatever altitude, whether you're using a bubble sextant or having to adjust with a correction for the height of eye if you're using an optical leveling device. All the purpose is to replicate that flat surface that you're going to navigate on.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I think when we discuss it, and I can only use, that's fine. I don't want anyone else to use my rubber ducky. I like the rubber ducky life preserver because
Life preserver. Just say rubber ducky's fine. As long as it comes with the other words afterwards.
yes.
Rubber ducky life preserver.
Yes, I always. Yes. I just don't say rubber ducky. I know Adam
going
did.
rubber ducky, isn't it? It's already being described as going rubber ducky, and no one's going to know what that
This is
means.
my fault, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's right though. It's going to be.
I'm sorry. It just kills. It makes their argument a farce because one, you have to let them go, right? I know we shouldn't be saying this live because I don't think they're smart enough to catch the secret. They haven't catch the black swan after all these years. But if you ask them what is the dip correction and what are the attributes of the dip correction, and they start going off on whatever they conjure in their pea-sized piece of horse shit between their ears, because it's all different. Depends on who you talk to. Once you get them to say what it is, and then you bring out the rubber ducky life preserver and ask them where is the dip correction then? Because the only thing you're correcting for is where you're at. Nothing to do with any horizon or refracted friggin' curvature, right? It just kills all that to death. I love it. I'm going to have a show.
But Kiwi, they still can claim a dip correction that involves 7/6R in today's celestial navigation, because that's what is in today's, one second, Adam, is in today's celestial navigation. But if they do that, straight after they state that, you then have to ask them, okay, tell me about height of eye correction, because that is the real world dip correction that was originally the dip correction. So it's been changed from just dip correction to this fantastical dip correction and the real world height of eye correction. And the height of eye correction then puts them into that rubber ducky life preserver with their eyes on the water.
Exactly.
So they can state whatever they want about their dip correction because it won't change, and their 7/6R, because it won't change anything when they have to do height of eye correction, because they don't want to do that part.
Yeah, it
They want
destroys.
to talk about dip correction and move on to something else.
Yeah, it destroys every aspect of their conjured argument they're going to come up with. There's no way to go. There's no way out, right? Because you're only changing one thing with the rubber ducky life preserver. You're only changing your position with the sextant. That's it. Nothing else changes. So why do you then get rid of the actual height of eye correction, their dip correction? It shows the whole canvas, and then there's only one aspect of it: height of eye. Follow?
Yeah. But the point I'm making is their dip correction is not height of eye correction. Their dip correction is a mathematical thing.
I know. That's why I expose it.
Metaphorically, whether you're utilizing this to weasel in a geometric horizon and a tangent to it and make that the correction, because they don't acknowledge that it's height of eye, as Brian's pointing out, what QE's doing is literally, metaphorically, throwing them off the boat so that their height of I is corrected for. There's no mathematical correction anymore. It's thrown you off the boat. There you go. There's your height or I correction.
Yeah, I understand that, but they still, even if you initially put them into the water with their eye on the waterline, they still can assert their dip correction.
Right.
Because their dip correction is purely a mathematical thing.
No, they think it has something to do with the refracted horizon. Is what they do, or some other conjured horizon that we don't see, which is a train wreck. Yeah, we got it.
Actually, that's a good mathematical point. If you've put the eye to the actual surface, then it can only dip away at that point. The reality is it's going to appear higher. That it would be a positive on there. They'd have to twist it away because the horizon rises.
Their bulge never
They'd have
rises
to
up.
add a number instead of take a number away.
But my point is that even if you put their eyes on the waterline, they can still claim their 7/6 or dip correction because it's a purely mathematical thing. It doesn't matter if their eyes are on the waterline or if their eyes are 100 foot above the water. Their dip correction can still be claimed because their dip correction is a mathematical thing that involves 7/6R and a mathematical globe's geometric horizon.
Well, that's
what they want to do.
Well, that's when you ask. See, this is all leading up to it. That's when you ask them to have them describe what the dip correction is first. So that puts everything on the table.
Yeah,
but I wanted to say that's the purpose of the rubber ducky life preserver, isn't it?
Yeah.
It brings the eye to and negates the need. It shows what the height of eye correction is for. It's to bring it so it's equivalent to the level surface you're working with. That's if you don't need to correct because you've already brought the eye to the level surface, shows you what its purpose is. And therefore they're screwed. They're admitting, like the guy did, that it's a level surface he's working with.
Yep.
But no, there's something you're missing here.
No, we're not missing it.
I can guarantee you.
No, you're not. You can't guarantee it.
I can.
Hold on. So Brian's going to say, no, even if they're in a rubber ducky life preserver, there's still a 7/6R geometric horizon to correct from. That's his point.
Correct. And I asked him to do that, didn't I? I asked him, wait, Brian, if you listen to the clip, I got him specifically to commit to that point. I wanted him to. Yeah, because it's fundamental to their non-ability to locate their horizon. Yeah, so I made sure he put that in. I'm not. So we did get them. We do get that because it's fundamental for them being able to not locate their geometric position, which they're gonna, as Rufy does, that's the point they get to. They have to get back to it being an actual position. But they can't.
We understand what you're saying, Brian. But what we're saying is, when they get to that point, also, then what are they claiming? They're saying, oh, well, they've still got to have a geometric horizon. Let's just change that slightly in terms of the intonation. So they've got to still claim they've got a geometric horizon, Brian.
Yeah, I don't go that route.
Yeah.
I know you guys like that route. I don't go that route. You guys are missing it. I'm gonna have to get you off to the side, I think.
Just no. I'm sorry, but you're all missing it.
No, you're missing it.
No,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they conjure, Brian. It depends on who you're talking to, right? Because some of these numpties on the ball-tard side, they don't have a clue what dip correction is. All they do is bagok it, right? Bagok, dip correction, right? But I don't care if they have their 7/6 refracted horizon. The rubber ducky kills it because nothing else changes except you and a rubber ducky life preserver with the sextant. And you don't use dip correction with that. So it doesn't have anything to do with anything outside you and the rubber ducky. Follow?
Yeah, no. Dip correction used to be height of eye correction. But now they're two different things.
Yeah, I know.
And they equivocate between the two. And what they try to do is do dip correction, their version of dip correction, and then walk straight past height of eye correction and onto some other nonsense.
Well, they can't do that.
That's what they tried to do.
No, but they can't. As soon as they get the rubber ducky, did you see the citations in
Life preserver. Life preserver.
I'm sorry, rubber ducky life preserver.
Being
They
taken
go.
seriously by Brian. I was being taken seriously by Adam, and now the person that claimed that he was always going to say life preservers now calling it the rubber ducky. I put him in a rubber ducky.
Yeah, it even has, if you go
Well,
in Master B, I'm serious. If you go in Master B, they say dip correction. And they say if you're in a, I don't know if they say dinghy. Did they say dinghy or a small boat near the water? I can't remember. It says then you don't have to apply the dip correction. It's over.
Important. I think it's quite important. I think they said canoe.
The point Brian is making there is for me, it's the differentiation between what the old books say, which is, like I said, light of eye is adjusting for how the horizon will adjust when you vary the limitation to the deck. How it's described earlier on. What they're trying to do here, and it's important that they have to have 7/6R for it to approximate to deck limitation. Without it, the curvature is too much. So they have to have 7/6R for this to match the deck limitation. But fundamentally, the way in which the mathematics of the two, even though they're the same, the way in which they're explained is one is an optical limitation to the deck effect. But in the baller's height of eye correction to dip, it's a geometric adjustment which is affected by 7/6R refraction. It's got nothing to do with the optics of the lens. It's purely orthographic with 7/6R adjusting placements.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
exactly. And that's my point. Even if you put me as a baller with my eyes on the waterline, I can still claim that I have just done dip correction. And I'll just, at that point, I can then say I don't need to do height of eye correction because my eyes are already on the water. But I can still claim that I've done dip correction, because their dip correction, in today's world, dip correction is only a mathematical thing. It's absolutely unnecessary. It's height of eye correction that is the real world correction today. And dip correction used to be called, or height of eye correction used to be called dip correction a long time ago. So that's my point. They try to claim dip correction as if, and give the impression that it's height of eye correction they've done, and walk straight past that and get on to some other nonsense. Because they don't want to deal with height of eye correction, because that puts their eye line on the water, and that they can't have.
But that is the matchup where what you're saying and where Nathan has Rufy is it's the same thing. It's just different ways of getting to it, because it's the route, but it fundamentally that's the, call it the okie doke.
What if they're in a white water raft?
Don't put that credit on me. I mean, I latched onto that bandwagon after you did that with Rufy. I just picked up on it. It wasn't anything to do with me. The fact that I labour the point is me labouring your point. You said it in quite hushed tones, quite subtly to him. That's going to require a geometric horizon. Me, I just rubbed his face right in it, multiple times. But that's you, Adam, not me. Don't give me the credit for that.
And you do labour the point very eloquently, though, and it is a really important point. And I'd say it was the point the guy couldn't get past. He wanted to get past it, which is why I said, "Well, how are you defining what this visible, non-geometric horizon is?" But it is fundamental to their claim. This flim-flam between movement to something that's curving and then affixing it a geometric position. It's nonsensical, really. Yeah, I put it to him in text politely to get the admission. It's important to get, that's what I did on Friday, to get that admission, like that guy did. Because once you've got that, he's done. Once you dip, and they're done. So, because it is, and that's just why the Black Swan's so powerful with it. Because if they're going to go and do this, and Brian sticks on the point, because it is important that the redefinition of what this dip is. Dip is one thing, height of eye adjustment is another. But it's also very important that they notice they don't do height of eye adjustment. They do a geometric adjustment and then abandon optics. Yeah, done rambling.
I think
It's worse than.
no. Go ahead, Brian. Finish it off.
No, I just what I'm going to say is actually just not just off of that topic slightly. It's just saying it's worse than that, because what they've been doing on the circuit, on Discord and that, is telling all the flat earthers that they can't do celestial navigation because they would have to know the height of all the stars to do the trigonometry, which is the length of the sides and the internal angles. They're trying to basically hijack real celestial navigation for themselves and have all the flat earthers trying to do internal trigonometry on triangles and heights of stars and all this other rubbish. That's what they're at. They're trying to completely ignore the fact that celestial navigation do not assert any height to any star, and they don't use the internals of the angle. The elevation angle is used as a way of determining several things, but the first thing is your zenith distance. There's a couple of other things too, but the first thing is zenith distance. The other things absolutely annihilate them, but we don't need to talk about that now. But that's what they're at.
Their response relies upon it. So you're absolutely right, Brian. They need to distract away with the one hand while they're, pulling out a geometric horizon from behind their back or in their sleeve. It is quite crucial that they do this. They distract you by asking you about the height of the star and saying that you need to get it. Well, how do you calculate it? Well, doing this method, it's like, well, this is the method of navigation. It doesn't require I have the height. You're going to tell me that because it's using what they say is, well, it's just a triangle. Therefore, although I'm calculating the distance based on the angle, minusing it from 90 to get the GP, I'm going to say you need to give me the height of the star. Like, why? In your globe model, you've got a very fixed distance to each of these items in the sky. You can tell us what the values are. Yet when you do this method and start claiming that you've got dip correction to a geometric horizon, that we're on a sphere when there's no way of acquiring elevation angles from a curved surface, they move their height from fixed distances to infinite in their descriptions. They relinquish all of their sudden claims of the distance to the sun or the distance to the moon or the distance to any of these navigation stars. No, they're all out at an infinite distance now that we've flattened out the ground to actually measure an angle from it. Like, well, you're the only ones with any issues because we're not ascribing heights to the stars, nor do we need to if we perform the methods of navigation and accept that it's a flat plane that you're actually performing this on, because it can't not be. That never involves the star's height, and it never involves we defend a change in height or use one. But for you on a globe, it's all over the place. Go from fixed distances to infinite distances. Like us, you're not actually calculating them, but you still have to change them because it makes no sense within your model. Not that you can get an angle to do it anyway, but I'm just saying this is one of the distraction techniques they've got to throw onto you to hide away from the fact that they've got all sorts of crazy things going on with their stars and their distances when they do this, or don't, as the case may be, with no angles to acquire. So they've got to distract you. I'll throw something out for you to suddenly start complicating your brain with while they slip in a geometric horizon that you don't notice.
It's an undoing of the purpose of celestial navigation. Celestial navigation is a geolocating tool. It isn't a stellar locating tool. It never claims to be. But inherently within its process, it makes the disclaimer that it's an imaginary celestial sphere, yeah, in the way it works. Purposely to navigate on the surface. It makes no claims as to any height. In fact, it makes a disclaimer that there is no height. It's just arbitrary.
That's a very good point. I like the way you did that. I like how concise that is, Adam. Very well done. I'm going to, when somebody brings that back up again, ask them that question.
Wait,
question.
are you telling me that
Hold on,
interstellar
question.
navigation doesn't work?
No. Hold on, Arwen.
Oh, the question of whether or not it's used for geo or stellar location.
Yes.
Yeah, good question.
Yes, that's the yeah, that's what you do to just kill that right in its steps. Yep.
Well, I have another question that I think you'll like. Is all angular measurements measurements of perspective? Can you think of any angular measurement that's not a measurement of perspective?
Everything you look at
Right.
is everything you see through your eyes is perspective.
Yeah, so all angular measurements, whether they be vertical or horizontal, whether you're using triangulation or trigonometry or elevation angles or whatever you're doing, it's always perspective based. Now,
No.
in there,
In physical terms, you're right, but no. Just in pure mathematical terms, you're wrong.
Yeah, correct.
You can take an angular measurement of something that's nothing to do with perspective. If I'm doing it in pure mathematical terms on paper in Muppet Vision, for example, and then you can describe that as being an association to reality. But in reality, you're only ever going to be measuring an angular relation because that's what your angular size is. That is perspective. But you can make an angular measurement on paper for something that has nothing to do with perspective. So in physical terms, yes. In mathematical terms, no.
no, because
if part of the measuring device is a lens, then perspective becomes relevant. But if actually, if I like cut 45 degrees of cake and I used a 45-degree measure to do so, that's 45 degrees. It might look different from perspective, but it's still 45 degrees. But if anything, when we're talking celestial navigation, though, then yeah, it really is important because we're not measuring to the star with a 45-degree angle. We're using the lens to define the angle. And then that's what's so important. What does that angle mean? Is it just a slice of cake? Or is it incorporating perspective and meaning distance?
yeah, see, Nathan, what you spoke about there is not an angular measurement. That's an orthographic calculation on a page. It can't be an angular measurement because
A slice of cake's a slice of cake.
It can. Slice of cake. Adam gave
you
a perfect.
can't measure something orthographically
Adam
in an
did it for
angular
me.
fashion. You can't measure something angularly in an orthographic fashion. We don't see an orthographic fashion.
Adam gave a bit. Okay, but
The point I'm making.
Adam gave a cake example.
Yeah.
The angle of the cake that you cut out. That's not a perspective angle measurement, though, is it? It's still an angle.
No, but if you want to do a measurement of an angular measurement of something, let me get to the end of it, because I didn't get to the point to get to the end of it. Right?
No, but you've changed your wording. You're right now. As soon as you say if you want to make an angular measurement, then that automatically implies angular size, and that is absolutely perspective because that's what you're talking about when you're describing angular size. Because of your minor rephrasing of the statement, you're absolutely correct now.
Did I not say measurement in the first place? I thought I said all angular measurements are measurements.
A measure
of
of something. When you change it, when you put it first, it implies the perspective measurement when you're making an angular measurement, because then it's implied. When you say a measurement of an angle, then it's not, because it doesn't have to be.
Well, what I said at the start is, are all angular measurements of perspective? Right, now, maybe I didn't word it 100% correctly, but I thought I worded it right, maybe not, right? But the point is that if you're measuring something, an angle to something in reality, or the size of something, an angular size of something, it's a perspective measurement. Now, where I'm going with this is, in their belief, right, nonsense and all that it is, that when they move backwards down over a geometric curve, due south away from Polaris when they're north of their equator, Polaris drops in the sky due to this geometric drop rate that they are going over, right? Now, we know where their radius comes from. It comes from flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. All those elevation angles, all angle measurements, right, on a flat plane, and they're all angle measurements of perspective. It's a perspective drop. So if they are going backwards down over a geometric, right, physical curve, then that means two things. Number one, all angular measurements cannot exist. And number two, the reason they can't exist is because perspective can't exist. under those conditions. Because their conditions, there is no perspective. So angular measurements cannot exist. Because all angular measurements are measurements of perspective.
Right, you're not measuring the angular drop towards the horizon with a sextant anymore. You're standing on a circle and you're twisting your position around on the circle to cause the drop in an orthographic representation when they describe it. Therefore, the aspect of perspective is removed. I mean, this is the exact same bait and switch, or whatever you want to call it, that they did with the horizon in the first instance. They do the same trick with the begging the question proof of, I think, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator. They've got the same trick going on, removing all aspects of perspective, by putting you in an orthographic view representation, so they can describe that perspective effect as Earth curve. They're just doing it with the stars, or what you're taking as a flat Earth angle and watching something move towards the horizon as you move away from it, and the angle, that's two straight lines, that changes as you do that. If you then say, well, no, I'm going to take away any ability for you to use a tool to measure this angle, I'm going to put you on the curve of the tool. And then I'm going to twist the tool around. And as I twist you on the tool, now a curved surface, that's what moves the star down. You moving. I assume, because Penny's only just dropped, Ryan, that's where you're saying that they introduced the globulus effect, i.e. it's the turn of the Earth that moves the star towards the horizon, as opposed to an angle measurement that you take from a flat plane that drops in a literal measurement that you're doing in physical terms that can't be done if the surface is curving, i.e. you're on the protractor twisted round, which will be globulus. Is that why you dropped that in at the beginning?
Well, I just said globulus just as a catch-all term. Now, where I'm going with this is, if they claim that angles exist and angular measurements exist and perspective exists, then that means that their globe can't exist. Because for their globe to exist, that means Polaris has to drop 1 degree for every 60 nautical miles that they move back and around down over the curve of their globe. Polaris has to drop 1 degree in the sky. And that means that is not dropping due to an angular measurement, that's a measurement of perspective. That's dropping because they are going backwards down over a geometric curve. So either geometric curve of Earth exists or perspective and angular measurements exist. The two of them cannot exist, cannot coexist in the same space. You can either have one or the other.
Right.
Do you understand?
Yes, I do. Yes.
That kind of goes back to the height of eye correction, which, like I said, was initially ascribed as how the horizon resolves based on the limitation of the angles to the deck, how altitude changes that. All the ballers do is exactly what Brian's discussed. They abandon this optical effect that it's plain to see is there, it's demonstrable, and no longer exists when the only way you can explain this effect is to match it up with 7/6R and a geometric horizon, as we've discussed. If that matches up, then you have to abandon the effects of perspective, even to the horizon, and the effects of limited angles to the deck. That no longer exists. It can't exist because then the ball mass wouldn't match. Because it's, as you said, with regards to hijacking curve calculator, it's the same thing. You can't, in their world, they can't have both. They have to abandon perspective because that's what they've stolen the maths to match up to.
Shout out to Mike808 for a super chat. Appreciate that. We gonna get to presentation at some point here today, or we're just gonna talk about their train wreck idea of what's left over
presentation.
I thought this was just a chit chat show.
Nope.
Let's get it on then.
That would have started with food.
No, I've got one other question.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Because Nathan's the guy we've been talking about from the show. Nathan's put a couple of videos up, and I've seen. Nathan, I've got a serious question. Who's doing the driving?
Me.
It was you, was it? I thought there was some nice turns from your daughters, if not, because you said she was driving.
Yeah, I'm sure the novelty will wear off. I had to do something. It was 4 hours. I was bored waiting for him to come.
I thought it was quite nice where 10th had got him to a point. So you got out the car, jumped off the bridge, and then it said in a Grand Theft style, wasted. It was nicely timed.
That's the advantage of it happening, right? I could hear where the conversation was going. I was like, I've got to find somewhere to commit suicide just so I can show this guy die. And it just coincidentally happened at exactly the right moment when he said, "That's it, it's game over, you're dead." And I'd just killed the person in the little game I was playing. So yeah, that was not by coincidence. I could hear where the conversation was going.
So that wasn't edited. That was live suicide to the conversation.
That was live. When you listen to when you watch it back live, that happens because I've gone, oh right, he's just about to kill him. I better quickly turn the car around, find a high bridge, and jump off it, so I can have the word "wasted" appear as he does. And I timed it beautifully.
Class.
Are you about done now?
Yeah.
I am.
You guys want to get to the science presentation?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks for the segue. Let's roll on into the part. I don't even know. Is it part 4? I think it's part 4. We'll go along. We went for a while here, so wherever we end up. I'll just take a feeling for it, and then we'll end it. We got plenty of time, and we're gonna go slow as molasses anyway. So let's kind of shift focus back on to train wreck science acumens and show you why are train wrecks. And this presentation is going to show it in spades. Probably the next 2. So just as a refresher, the scientific method, this isn't mine, by the way, as you already know from the first presentation, but I highlighted the top 3 steps here. These top 3, it should be observe a natural phenomena, construct formal hypothesis, and test an experiment. Those are the 3 indispensable steps of the scientific method. For something to be natural science, it has to have these 3 steps in it somewhere. All the other ones, I'm not saying the other ones aren't important. Literature review, analyze data, validate or invalidate hypothesis. Well, duh. Report results, they're all important. But you can get around most of those. I'd say a couple of them. You wouldn't even have to do anything, right? As long as you have these 3 steps, you're good to go. You have science. That's it, period. End of story. It's not an agree-disagree situation. I don't care your feelings on it. Doesn't matter. You must have it. You must have the hypothesis. You better have it. We're going to hold your feet to the fire. But what do they usually do? They focus on this guy, right? It seems that they focus on the last step. Some do. Report results. And they think that that's peer review, right? Because that's what they're getting to. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But this isn't peer review. They have the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. Step 7 is just report. Period. See that period right there? That ends it. See, the next step is peer review. Peer review is not in the scientific method whatsoever. In fact, peer review is the antithesis of actual science. Why would you say that? Well, I would say that because peer review denotes subjectivity, whereas the scientific method is purely objective. As simple as that. I can destroy it right there. Prosecution rests. Number 1, I'll ask him, show the peer review step in the scientific method. I just went over that. It's not in there. Anywhere. Number 2, the scientific method was created to rid the landscape of bias, loudest voices, ruling class, majority, votes, consensus, opinions. Like I said, the subjective. By instituting a method solely focused on the objective, the empirical, observable, testable, repeatable, falsifiable. That's what empirical means. And the testable and repeatable, the repeatable is attached by the lips to the testable. Not repeating the observation. Just because you looked at something, closed your eyes, and then opened your eyelids back up, you repeated the observation. That has no relevancy in anything coherent. Right? You're just an idiot. Now, I'm going to catch you real quick stating it. I'm going to make you look like a fool. Right? This is cakewalk. The goal of the scientific method, that is the goal. Empirical. All these are tenets of the scientific method. The spinning space monkeys mindless appeal to it because it's the only way to get their fairy tales into the mix, whereby bastardizing it. Right? That's what they do. Number 3, Catholic priests also have been banking on their internal peer review for centuries. Right? Ball-tard science, religion, pseudoscience, has much in common with theirs. Number 4, let's take a look at what Richard Smith, MD, former editor of the British Medical Journal, a bigwig, has to say about peer review. He claimed that peer review is ineffective, largely a lottery, anti-innovatory, slow, expensive, wasteful of scientific time, inefficient, easily abused, prone to bias, and unable to detect fraud and irrelevant. I don't know if I could state it any more concise than that. Thanks, Richard. I mean, that's it. Should be over. Why are we hearing about it? Well, because you got pretender clown numpty dipshits that just peer review because they seen it, the headlines in Wiki or something. That's the majority of what they do anyway. And it's no different here. Once you just scratch beneath the surface and say, okay, what the heck is this thing? Then they fall apart because they got no depth. That's why. This is no different than any other situation. Number 5, this is a good one. This is from Goodstein, Conduct and Misconduct in Science from Caltech in 2002. This is from one of the high churches, Caltech, right? One of their high churches. Let's see what they got to say right here. Mr. Is it Goodstein? I was going to call him Good Friend. Editors of scientific journals and program officers at the funding agencies have the most to gain from peer review, and they steadfastly refuse to believe that anything might be wrong with the system. Their jobs are made easier because they have never had to take the responsibility for decisions. They are also never called to account for their choice of referees, who in any case always have the proper credentials. Since the referees perform a professional service almost always without pay, the primary responsibility of the editor or program officer is to protect the referee. Thus, referees are never called to account for what they write in their reviews. As a result, referees are able, with relative impunity, to delay or deny funding or publication to their rivals. When misconduct of this kind occurs, it is the referee who is guilty, but it is the editors and the program officers who are responsible for propagating a corrupt system that makes misconduct almost inevitable. This kind of misconduct, that is, I fear, rampant in all fields of science. He should have said pseudoscience. I digress. Not only biomedical science. Recently, as part of a talk to a large audience of mostly young researchers at an extremely prestigious university, I outlined this analysis of the crisis of peer review. The moderator, a famous senior scientist, was incredulous. He asked the audience how many disagreed with my heresy. No one responded. Then he asked how many agreed. Every hand in the house went up. I don't know what else to tell you, folks, right? Because even the youngsters know that it's the okie doke, right? It has nothing to do with science. This has nothing to do with science. Peer review does. Nothing whatsoever. Like I said, it's the antithesis of it. So, from Courtney, comments regarding on the nature of science, physics in Canada, the author describes the three-legged stool of scientific error correction as experimental care, reproducible experiment, see the reproducible part on the experiment part, remember I mentioned that above, and peer review. Like Occam's razor, peer review is a temporal expedient for judging scientific work at any given time. Peer review serves the temporal interests of the publishers, funding agencies, and employers. Listen to this. You've heard this before. The ultimate arbiter of scientific validity is repeatable experiment alone. Alone. That's it. Love it. They're Harvard graduates, by the way, Courtney A. and her husband. The only aspect that should be expertly reviewed should be whether or not the researchers followed the scientific method, right? That's why we're here. That's why people are looking in these quote-unquote science journals. It should be positioned right above the abstract. This what it should show right here. The scientific method, exactly what this should show. You can take out my other admin steps, but these 3 steps: observe a natural phenomena, formal scientific hypothesis, test and experiment. It should list out what these are in the paper. That's it. That's what it should be. You think you ever find this? No. It's not even in the damn papers. We're going to get to that here in a second. If they don't have this in the beginning of their paper, then it's hasta la vista, baby. Get out. We're not talking science here. We're talking religion, right? That's how we clean the mess up. There's a problem then. Of course, NCBI database and Google Scholar will have like 3 or 4 studies in it. I'm highballing right here. Combined, astronomy, astrophysics, cosmology, and theoretical physics will take their rightful place at the bottom of the sci-fi section. Paleontology, archaeology, anthropology, geology will take their rightful place right beside photography and Bag of Hammers observations with accompanying pontiff declarations. And evolution, can't leave this numpty out, will take its rightful place in religious studies, myths and fairy tales, just below Humpty Dumpty. Will people lose their jobs? Yep. But hey, we still need people to pick up trash. A study done by the Wharton School, the University of Pennsylvania professor J. Scott Armstrong in 2017. Fewer than 1% of papers in scientific journals follow the scientific method. Game, set, match. How do you like that? They're even narking on their own people, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. You can do it yourself. Just jump on Google Scholar or NCBI database and start punching in key terms. And you're not going to find them. Use hypothesis and independent variable, right? 2 things that are absolutely crucial to the scientific method. And you won't find them. They're not going to be there. It could be an informal study. It's just not going to happen. I'm telling you, I've done it myself. I did it way long time before these guys did it. Let's stop here. Questions, comments?
I'm glad you stopped here because it means I get to labour that point. I was making a mental note to labour that point that you just made right at the end. Back in the day when you had the pink writing out, you challenged the person on the other side to go and find their quote-unquote peer-reviewed paper so that we could have a look at it. And you'd go through it, and I'm sure you told me this trick at one point, which is what you've just said. It's just you said it quite quickly, which is you just do a quick search and look for independent variables in a search term in one of these papers. If you can find it, then you've got a good chance that you can find the full method somewhere in the paper. But as you've just said, less than 1% have got that. But the other thing I made note of in the presentation that you just said was when it comes to having a referee or scientific method, it seems absurd, and I'm going to tell you why. My father used to be a computer programmer, and when you're dealing with just raw logic in a computer system, it's a kind of, if you're putting something through that logical process and it doesn't function correctly in logic, it doesn't work. It just stops working. But once the process has been correctly formulated in logic, and something goes through that logical process and the logical process is sound, it just comes out the other end working. There's no kind of in between. It just either functions logically or it doesn't. But when it comes to the scientific method, the process itself has this inbuilt way of only allowing something to come through the other end on one side or the other of a fence. Either you've got the cause of the effect, or you've got the not cause of the effect. And once the method's been formulated correctly and you've put something through it, it can only come out one side or the other if you've done the process correctly. So again, just coming back to the point where you said, if there's going to be any peer review in terms of science, all it needs to assess is, have they adhered to the scientific method or not? Because after that point, it's a kind of conveyor belt of logic. You stick the thing on it, it goes through the process, and at the other end, it comes out on one side or other, and there is no in between. You just see which side it came out. It's kind of like saying, well, I'm going to employ a referee to make sure this computer follows its logical steps that you've put into it to do. Well, is it working? Yeah, it's working fine. I now want you to sit and make sure that every time it puts something through that logical process, it does it correctly. Oh, well, of course it'll do it correctly. It can't not do it correctly. It's a logical process. There's no in between here. It can't kind of do it right. It either does it or it doesn't. And if you're performing the scientific method, you can't get it wrong if you formulated the method correctly. Put it through the process, it works or it doesn't.
Very well said and summarized.
It was a bit early on in the objections, a guy from the BMJ that was expressing his disdain at peer review.
Yeah, the editor of it.
Yeah. I would, and I want to make then this is the point of the distinction. I think Nathan summarized exactly what science is. BMJ, I would suggest he thinks he knows what science is, because he's talking about medicine, and there may, his frustrations aside, there is merit to peer review in things like medicine, psychology, and stuff, because it's not empirical in the sense it doesn't give you a cause and effect. It's not decisive within the method. So if you're looking at treatment methods, drug regimes, etc., then peer review, replication of studies are important things in deciding this non kind of cause and effect, definitive cause and effect relationship. But when we're talking about science, that's the whole point of the experiment. If you're going to criticize it, all you can do is criticize the experiment and claim it doesn't isolate what the hypothesis is supposedly testing. That's the only criticism, really, for me, you could allow your peers to throw at it. What you can't do is then ask them to opinionate on the outcome. There's only need for an opinion on the outcome if it's something like medicine. But with science and the scientific method, the outcome is definitive. That's the purpose of following the method.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I would. Well, maybe it's just me, but I haven't heard anything about peer review for about a year. No one seems to mention it anymore. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe other people have heard it.
You're just not frequenting the parts of the store where they are.
Well,
That's probably it.
there was a point, though, weren't there, back in 2016, 17s, where peer review decided scientific fact even on Discord and discussion forums. You'd feel that was a valid support of something.
Yeah.
I think that's why you're throwing this in here, because, you know, it did used to be bandied around as something that had merit within the scientific method.
Yep. Well, if they ever do decide to bring that one up again, then you got the ammunition out there, flat earthers. Just hammer them, right? All you'd have to do is just say subjective versus subjective, and it's all over. You can keep it simple and keep it short. Right? All right, let's move on to typical baller parrots. We're all used to these, right? Especially the first one. This is a new phenomenon, relatively new. Science never proves things. Yeah. When I first come out here, I was put up against the wall. And I'm sure, unless you're 2 days into this and haven't been around, I was put up against the wall. As in, if you believe in the flat earth, then you must deny all of science or physics. Right? I know every single person in here on the panel, hopefully, has experienced this. I know the BALLBUSTERS have, because they've been around for more than a minute. So this is a rather new phenomenon. They must, I guess in their minds that they must do this. I don't know why, because it ends even worse off for them. And we're going to see that here in a few minutes. So that's just number one, science never proves things. Number two, science is self-correcting. Science is always changing, right? You always hear these from the pseudoscientists and their prodigy that parrot it, right? You always hear it. Why do they say, that is, mindlessly parrot, these belly-laughing, fallacious train wrecks? Well, they need flexibility when their previous just-so stories that were peddled as science get pummeled. It's real easy, because you can just sidestep it. And they could pivot and say, see, science is correcting itself. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's get on to science never proves things. Number one, it's a reification fallacy. Science isn't an entity. It doesn't take action or have volition. It's a method, the scientific method. Natural science is the scientific method. That's what it is. Can't have natural science without it. So let's get to the actual principles of it, right? Let's see what their own priests say about this. They say that science doesn't prove things, but their priests, like in courses at Lumen Learning, biology for majors. This is a science in their fairy tale worldview. Forming a hypothesis. Let's take a look at this. When conducting scientific experiments, researchers develop hypotheses to guide experimental design. A hypothesis is a suggested explanation, that's incorrect by the way, that is both testable and falsifiable. You must be able to test your hypothesis, and it must be possible to prove your hypothesis true or false. Why are their priests saying one thing and the circle jerking baltards are saying the complete opposite? That's the question. It's not the only one. We're going to go over a few more here. See, we got the big boys in here. These are the big pants. From genome research, students are taught the proper way to do science is through the following steps. First, devise a hypothesis, and then design experiments that will prove or disprove their theory. Why are they even saying these words if science doesn't prove things? The conscientious scientist follows this with a deliberate collection of data from these carefully crafted experiments, and the data prove or disprove the aforementioned theory. They said it again. Second sentence. Thereby placing a new stepping stone in the path through the jungle of our unknown universe. It seems obvious that this is the appropriate way of moving forward in science. Yeah, duh. In fact, most published papers, that's incorrect. The hypothesis is put forth. They haven't been looking recently. Followed by experimental proof. We have proof 3 times in this small citation. What's going on? We're getting told by pretender clown baltards that science doesn't prove anything, but all of their pseudoscience priests in their churches are saying prove everywhere. Or disprove, same thing, ipso facto. Right? I'm not getting it. That's why I labeled these guys many years ago when they started doing this. Not only this particular thing, but if you remember, I labeled them the left-wing fuckwit faction that just makes shit up. The new term or phrase for them nowadays is anti-flat earthers. They're the same group. And I'm showing it in spades right now. What are you going to do? There's number 2. What about number 3? Let's go to Anne-Marie Helmenstein. She's PhD, biomedical sciences, BA in physics and mathematics. Uh-oh. A hypothesis is a tentative answer to a question, scientific question. A testable hypothesis is a hypothesis that can be, here we go again, proved or disproved. Why are these words in there? Anti-flat earthers? You're not parroting the correct pseudoscientists. be proved or disproved as a result of testing, data collection, or experience. Only testable hypotheses can be used to conceive and perform an experiment using the scientific method. Where have you heard that before? I've just been saying that every day for the past 7 years. And it goes on. It even listed right here. Requirements for a testable hypothesis. In order to be considered testable, 2 criteria must. You see this must? That means it's absolutely necessary. It must be possible. What? There we go again. Prove. Why is that there? Anti-flat earthers. You're finished. It's all over. That the hypothesis, a second incoherent second grader can make you, it's a belly laughing spectacle. Right here. It must be possible to prove that the hypothesis is true. It must be possible to prove that the hypothesis is false. Period. I don't get it. Here we go again. Krista McClellan, The Nature of Science and the Scientific Method. Experiment. Once the hypothesis has been established, it is time to test it. The process of experimentation is what sets science apart from other disciplines. We've heard that before, haven't we? And it leads to discoveries every day. An experiment is designed to, prove or disprove the hypothesis. It's just a repeating refrain, right? They're pretender. These people are pretender clowns that are stating that science doesn't prove things. It's coming right from their churches. This is the doctrine from their churches, right in their faces. What do? They whistle past. I don't see. Like I said, an incoherent second grader. It's all over. They'll make you a laughing stock. If your prediction is correct, you will not be able to reject the hypothesis. Let's go. This is hammer time. This is from the geneticist of geneticists, the King Cheese of Baltardia. I know he's a Baltard. Dr. Craig Venter. You know, there's some things we can do in science in terms of proving certain things in life we discover. Prosecution rests on this, right? They're just making shit up. Direct contradictions to their pseudoscience priests and their churches and their doctrine, right? It's like asking a Catholic, what about Mary? They say Mary who? Right? Do Catholics do that? No. Mary is a crucial piece of their doctrine. That's exactly what these baltards are doing. Want me to stop? Let me stop right there. Go ahead. Any comments? You want me to continue to roll?
You stopped on Mary. I mean, what do you want from that? That's not exactly a feed line.
Okay, hold up. I'm going to give you a feed line. Let's go. Let's take a look at this. This is rampant in Baltardia. I hammered somebody the other day that might be coming out shortly, but I digress. On this exact thing, proof and evidence. They said proof isn't evidence, right? I'm sitting there laughing, right? I said, well, go ahead and cite the definitions for each and let's take a look and see if you're correct. I can't do that, QE. Yeah, you know, you damn can't. I will, though. Let's take a look. And this is what I did. I had them right at hand. From Merriam-Webster, evidence, an outward side indication, something that furnishes proof. It's right there in the definition. From Oxford Dictionary's proof, evidence comes right out of the gate. It's the first word. Evidence or argument establishing a fact or truth of a statement. To prove, from Collins Dictionary, test by experiment. This kills them. This also kills them. Merriam-Webster, proof synonyms. Confirmation, evidence. Then you have to define what a synonym is, right? It's over. Validation, it's all over. Proof is evidence. Evidence is proof. Boy, we went over this a long time ago, didn't we, Nathan? That was some years ago. I remember Anthony being involved in the discussion. Maybe we can get to that here in a second. So a scientific theory represents, this is from University of Rochester Physics Labs from Professor Wolfs. A scientific theory represents a hypothesis or group of related hypotheses which has been confirmed through repeated experimental tests. What is confirmed? It's a synonym for what? Proof. So this is actually saying proof, which has been proved. Get it? From their alma mater wiki, an experiment is a procedure carried out to support, refute, or validate, ding, 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 validation. What's it a synonym of? Proof. Refute or prove a hypothesis. Ergo, experiments prove or disprove the hypothesis. Da! Here comes the cowbell. Like that didn't have any cowbell. That was full of cowbell. It was so full, it had cowbell up to its ears. We're just smashing it here with cowbell. So here comes some more. Scientists using the scientific method have proven. You ready? Number 1, water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius at sea level. 1 atmosphere of pressure, that's 101 kilopascals or 14.7 psi. Number 2, combustion is a result of oxidation reactions. Information is only caused by intelligent agency. Lack of insulin with type 1 diabetes patients results in diabetic ketoacidosis. Lack of vitamin C intake in humans results in scurvy. Knowledge of the existence of the witch path information collapses the wave function. The rapid motion and collisions of molecules with the walls of the container causes gas pressure. Magnetism is caused by the motion of electric charge. The Coriolis effect is caused by 2 differing frames of reference, one rotating coordinate system, non-inertial, and one non-rotating coordinate system, inertial. It's got 3 other attributes to that, but I digress. Gluconeogenesis results in the production of glucose from specific non-carbohydrate precursors. These are absolutely true, proven, inviolable, never to be falsified, because they were once attempted to be falsified via experiment, but they failed. Get it? How about now, Nathan? Is this good time?
Yeah, it's back to, if you disprove something, don't you automatically prove something?
Yes, sir.
Well, yeah. Back to the either side of the fence. If you show that something is not the cause of a phenomenon you're studying, then you've proven it's not the cause. So validation of the null, if you're trying to assert that science is only trying to disprove things, well, number 1, no, because you're only trying to test the alternative. You never test the null. You're not trying to find yourself to be wrong. You're trying to find yourself to be right, and you find yourself wrong if you don't validate what you presume caused the effect. Well, that's still proof. If it wasn't that. So no matter what you do, you're proving things when you go through the method. The real reason they say this is because what they've been calling science, which you covered at the start of the presentation, which is peer-reviewed pseudoscience, doesn't prove things. Now, what it does is change its story ad hoc willy-nilly whenever required. Therefore, that turns into science evolves over time. No, it's your pseudoscience just correcting its errors ad hoc when required, as opposed to empirically validating the cause of an effect.
That was my little smile moment. The all this is, you know what science is, but the bit that made me chuckle a bit was see science correcting itself. I don't know if the right word is a paradox or whatever, but or just nonsense. But for any scientist to say that demonstrates the total lack of scientific method.
We're going to get to the self-corrected part. Hold on a second. Shout out to Mike 808 again. He's the Lone Ranger. Thanks for the super chat. He didn't say anything. Appreciate it, Mike. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, are you getting ready to cover in the presentation how a philosophy that prides itself on not being able to know anything is now was the creator of a method that allows you to know the cause of an effect?
That's too deep, man. I'm not getting ready to go over that. I'm getting ready to go over science of self-correcting. Adam kind of jumped the gun.
I did it. I've scrolled back. That's at the first bit. Look, They can just pivot and say, see, science correcting itself.
That was the outline.
Fair point.
I have one quick thing to say before you move on. We've all heard this question, haven't we? What evidence will you accept? I'll accept proof. I accept proof. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good one, Brian. What evidence would you accept? Well, the one that proves something. That's the type I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've heard that before. That's an older one, too. I don't think that I've heard that recently, but that used to run rampant. You're right.
The way it
Can I
gets
say
phrased is
something?
you ask, can it be proven? And I go, no, I mean, you can't prove anything. Science doesn't prove things. But I've got lots of supporting evidence.
I don't have any fruit, but I have a bucket of oranges right here for you. Go ahead, Neil. I know you wanted to get in there. You got rumpus. Go ahead, sir.
I don't know if my reception is any good. It's also been said that our standards are too high.
Yeah, that's subjectivity, and that's coming from some of the flat earther camp who may or may not be sort of pretender clowns.
No, Neil, their standards are too low. People were saying that.
All right, any we're gonna get the science is self-correcting. Thanks, Adam. Next, last call for alcohol with the previous one.
Not biting.
Yeah, you better not bite. Science is self-correcting. So, number one, does science have a self? You wouldn't think so. I hope not. So, on its bait, that's why, right from here, it's a reification fallacy. Right from there, everything downstream is going to be a belly laugher, right? So, the poster child and undisputed champion of the world, evolution, punctuated equilibrium. This was self-correcting back in the day. This is brought to you by Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge. Dr. Niles Eldredge, curator of the invertebrate paleontology at he's a curator of the invertebrate paleontology at the American Museum of Natural History. I didn't say that. It didn't sound right. You know what I mean. So, they're speaking about fairy tale evolution, whatever that is. Listen closely. Darwin's prediction of rampant, albeit gradual change affecting all lineages through time is refuted. What? The record is there, and the record speaks for tremendous anatomical conservatism. Change in the manner Darwin expected is just not found in the fossil record. So it's self-correcting, right? Like I said, this is evolution's a fairy tale anyway. They're just making the fairy tales refuted. It's quite redundant. But you see the picture, right? So now they're going to pivot away from what he said. Darwin, why? This is 1982. I graduated high school in 1982. Why am I still hearing about Darwin's evolution now? Wasn't it collapsed right here? I'm just saying. Ergo, punctuated equilibrium, the hypothesis that evolutionary, whatever that is. Yes, I'm still laughing. Evolutionary development is marked by isolated episodes of rapid speciation between long periods of little or no change. So what punctuated equilibrium is, the example, is no change. That's what I used to call it when I first ran into it. It's pretty funny. It's an ad hoc hypothesis. Right? To save the mother fairy tale. Right? Because we're still hearing about evolution. We shouldn't be hearing about it anymore. So what's an ad hoc hypothesis? Well, an ad hoc hypothesis is one created to explain away facts that seem to refute one's belief or theory. Ad hoc hypotheses are common in paranormal research and the work of pseudoscientists. Yeah, there's two of them right here. Because all this punctuated equilibrium is, by definition, the poster child example of an ad hoc hypothesis. Well, they're pseudoscientists. Simple. From their alma mater wiki, an ad hoc hypothesis is a hypothesis added to a theory in order to save it from being falsified. More or less the same thing the above one stated. Yeah. Well, that's it. It's just ad hoc. The last one, science is always changing. Really? So these scientific proofs, the one that I proved above, always change? Really? This whole list changes? Does water boiling change? Really? What's the change? Did combustion go back to phlogiston? Or is it still oxidation reactions? They don't change. These don't change, right? They're unchangeable, inviolable. Period. Pseudoscience, just so stories always change via ad hoc hypotheses because they were never scientifically validated to begin with. That's why. Y'all see it? Y'all see the game? Hope so. Questions, comments on this one?
Who was a character that it's the description of your paleontologist describing no change. There's a character in a 90s sitcom that does the same job. Ross Geller in Friends. Right? And he's positioned in the show as the intellectual, the high flyer, the high earner, the guy with the most respected job. Right? He works in a museum and writes papers about this kind of crap. And who do they put to contrast him in the narrative? Phoebe, dumb blonde flat earther.
Yeah. Was she a flat earther?
Yeah.
Or
she challenges him in this. There's a certain episode where she's literally challenging him on the theory of evolution for all the right reasons. And she challenges him and he's absolutely outraged. It's really funny.
Is there just a teeny weeny possibility in your scientific mind that God could have done it? Yes. She goes, oh, that was easy.
I didn't see that.
She wins in about 3 breaths, doesn't she, in the argument with pure logic.
I got to claim ignorance on this because I was out of the net during the phenomena of Friends, so I am unaware of this, and I have not seen that episode.
Yeah, just worth noting. It's just funny that they position this and have her win the argument. I mean, in many ways, very righteous. Friends was very rewarding for those sorts of reasons. You know, the person who should have won the argument would often win the argument. In this instance, it was Phoebe versus a paleontologist. And he's like, as I say, the most respected character in the show. Only in that area, in an academic way.
I'd like to see that one. I'm sure a lot of people have. Right, sure. Did they ever say, is it just by innuendo that she was a flat earther just because she went against the grain?
She made it pretty explicit that she was a flat earther in one of the episodes. Not enough for people to turn around and hate her and ridicule her as a character. So the writers did a reasonably good job of making it clear enough.
Ah, subtle.
Yeah, but she's known as the dizzy one. So it makes flat earthers look like dizzy people.
Well, we still have you, Neil.
Yeah, that's why they gave her.
Why did I know that was coming?
Yeah, they gave the airhead character the flat earther role, but she wasn't a flat earther in the show. But it's just that's one aspect of her being a Dumbo. As I say, they still positioned it in this particular episode where the airhead blonde flat earther undoes the paleontologist's position in a few breaths and just walks away with the victory.
I do remember that one.
We're going to stop it right here. I don't want to jump into the next section. I want to leave this section on its own because this got some teeth. Yeah, I'm going to stop. I'm going to wait till the next time. So this is a plug for the next Ballbusters. You need to stay tuned to this one. All the rest, all of them are great, but this got some teeth. They're bright and shiny.
It's a good time to break to talk about the, DITRH recently re-released Nathan Thompson with I can never remember this guy's name. The PhD Christian Answers in Genesis guy. His
Danny
name?
Faulkner.
Danny Faulkner. So it had Nathan Thompson challenging him in the hallway that I'd not actually seen. I'd not seen the full clip until Dearth released it. He's really going at him about, the people who deceive children and teach them lies should be throwing themselves off cliffs with stones attached and things. That's what he's telling him. Like, bloody hell, Nathan. Talking about fire and brimstone, it's really quite something. Anyway, it gets to the point where he's asking him about gas pressure without a container, and he simply doesn't have any answers for this stuff. But what is he out there doing? Well, he's out there doing what he does for money. He's selling his books. He's doing stuff that's self-serving by all accounts, and ridiculing flat earthers at the same time. That's what it's all about. This paleontologist is the same thing. They're out there propping up their own narratives. They're the ones that are applying for and divvying out the funding and potentially cock-blocking their opponents in the same time. Like, what a complete sham. There's a whole, probably all very claim to be ethical, process involved in this kind of nonsense with peer review. But in reality, it's just a load of shyster scammers. Or making up stories and deciding whose stories are going to be the most justified to the public with a shitload of money attached to it. I mean, it really is an outrage.
That's ironic you would bring up Danny Faulkner, because Danny Faulkner is going to be the poster child of one of my points for the next show. How you didn't even know that. See, we're on the same sheet of music, man.
Not really. I can't even remember the guy's name. I have no visual issue with Danny Faulkner. I don't, like I say, I can't remember his name half the time. But what I do remember is people's comments around him, because I know what he represents, and I'm not a Christian, so it doesn't get under my skin in the same way as it does other people. But one comment that really stuck in my mind was Paula, formerly Bible literalist, now Level Up, our Paula, not my wife Paula, was saying that he had sat on the panel with a load of anti-flat earthers who were atheists. Just to ridicule flat earthers.
Yeah.
Like, right. So you've entered the den of thieves then?
Yes.
Wow. I understand how that gets people's backup. I mean, I really do understand it. I empathise. I my skin crawls, but not because I have any concern for that. I don't care. No offence to you, Paul, or any other Christian that goes, that is, how dare he. I empathise. I totally get it.
That's the second or third time. 2 years ago, he showed up on Gem Panda's show. I'm not kidding you. That atheist mouth breather, there. I couldn't believe it. Somebody sent me it, and it was live. It was going on live, and they sent it to me, and they said, "You're not going to believe this." And I clicked it. Here's Danny Faulkner talking with Gem Panda. Oh,
appropriate.
Say again?
It's really appropriate, because at the moment, although it's not particularly harped on about the length it might be in future, their whole religion, their whole heliocentric religion, has come from Rome, from the church.
Yep.
So that's him he's in the right place, although it seems like the wrong place to people like Paula. They're sat with one of their priests in that regard. He's not really a priest, but you know what I'm driving at here.
Yep.
He's in the right place. They might not realise it, but when he sits down next to them, he hasn't got a dog collar on, but he may as well have, and rightly so. He's got a pew there. It's got his name on it. Now, even though they're all claiming to be atheists, they just don't realise that their religions come from him and the people he represents throughout the church.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's sat in the right place as far as I'm concerned. Now, I understand that other people who call themselves followers of Christ do not want to be seen in the same, ballpark as Danny Faulkner. I remembered his name this time. And I get why, even though, in quotes, both might call themselves Christians. But there's a very distinct difference between the two. But the Christians, or the church, the Roman Catholic Church, has given them, that's Gem Panda and their server, their religion. It's the same origins as Danny Faulkner's, even though they disagree with him, and it seems absurd that somebody who's claiming to be a Christian would sit on a panel of atheists. Like us and anti-flat earthers, there's not actually that much distance between them from the outside. When I look at Danny Faulkner sitting on the panel, I go, yeah, that figures. That makes perfect sense.
That is a twisted view on matters, but okay. James Mason out in chat. Is natural law scientific? No. And that is upcoming on this presentation. I think it's number 6. Don't quote me on that, but it's coming.
We'll preface that question with something, which is to say that that's an important detail that was definitely part of the story of us being lied to about what science is, and necessitated by the bait and switch that is calling pseudoscience science. So if you can relabel something that's seeming to be empirical because it's a matter-of-fact description of what is, that's all the laws of nature are. This is what is. This is how I describe this happening always. Just a description of something happening always. Right? Matter of fact. Is something occurring always? It always occurs, therefore it is what it is. Okay, fine. But that's not establishing the cause of that phenomena, which is all you've got, a description of a phenomena when it comes to natural law. But if you can call that description science, it opens the door to call other made-up descriptions science. And when it comes to natural law, those things will always occur. That's why they're laws of nature or described as such. But calling them scientific laws, as I say, just means that you can call gravity a law and then claim that that's science also. And it's just a story someone's made up and is giving credence to it by saying, oh, well, like the laws of nature are scientific, my law of gravity is scientific. And you're like, no. They've just greased the skids for their bullshitting.
Well, isn't a natural law just a description of what is?
Yep.
That wouldn't
Yes.
fall underneath the scientific method.
Exactly.
Correct. It might fall under the first step, observe natural phenomena. Well, the method isn't observe natural phenomena, then describe it really well. That's not the method.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, we'll get
And
it.
if you did try to put it in the, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you did try to put it in the scientific method, you would be trying to determine the cause of what is. That's an epistemological thing, isn't it?
Nothing wrong with that. No, nothing wrong with that. Just because the law itself is a really good description of what is a phenomena. Therefore, I have no issue whatsoever. I know I get laughed out of town when I say this. I don't see any issue with concerning ourselves with the cause of entropy. And getting laughed out of town when I say this, it's like I don't see it any differently to seeing what's the sun, or what causes the sun, or what causes the sky to be blue, or causes the day and night to come around, or any other phenomenon that we don't have any answers
Nathan.
for.
Nathan.
What causes vibration?
Nathan, you're roboting, man. Sorry. Interrupt. Can you drop out and come back in again?
Yeah, I'll drop and rejoin.
Okay. Just 1 second, folks. And he'll be back without skipping a beat. Radio check.
Check. Is that any better?
A little bit low.
Weird. I haven't changed anything.
Okay, go ahead. I turned you up.
Okay, hopefully I'm not all distorted if you've turned me up.
No, you're not.
I don't see any issue with trying to, or concerning yourself with what causes high pressure to go to low pressure, dispersion or diffusion or whatever, any entropic effect. Why does that happen? I want to know too. Whenever I bring it up, it's the case that you're never going to figure out the cause of entropy. Because what you end up doing is going back in time through to the ontological primitives. And the answer to the question just starts with a creator. But it doesn't change the fact that there's still a phenomena that could be studied. Yeah, okay, I get that it leads you to only two answer question. Okay. But we still have hot going to cold, don't we? Why? Doesn't mean you can't put it through the method, or it's illogical to say that you could. I don't see it as that. I see it as perfectly reasonable.
I think I totally agree with you. In the case of natural laws, though, admittedly, there's nothing wrong with a plucky trier, but you have to get to a reality of what you're actually trying to encapsulate within the scientific method when
did-
you get into the levels of natural law.
Did
but
you say
it doesn't
plucky?
preclude
Hold
it.
on a second, Adam. Did you say plucky trier?
Yeah.
Yes,
What, what the hell is that?
It was an analogy and a euphemism all wrapped up in a very succinct couple of words.
Well, my audience are mainly Americans. Go ahead and explain those things. That's like using acronyms.
Well, like, for years, the England national football team could be described as plucky triers. You go out and do something, you got bugger all over winning or achieving it. Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, frontline army guy, you know, they sent over the wall into no man's land, right? Now, there's a good chunk of them that are quaking in their boots. They know they're going to die. But there's one dude who goes, I'm going to kill them all! Come on! That's a plucky trier. Now, he gets shot in the head the moment he goes over the wall. But he was still a plucky trier.
Or he goes over and goes, here's an experiment to prove why hot goes to cold. And he still gets shot in the head.
I get it. That's the first time I ever heard that. Yeah, I got it. Okay, continue, Adam. Sorry to interrupt, but I want my audience to understand what a plucky trier was.
Winston call Brian a plum.
Stop it. I was agreeing with Nathan, but it doesn't preclude it because you don't try, you don't get. And maybe a bit of abductive reason leads you there to something, and who knows? Importantly, as Nathan said, it doesn't preclude it from me. It doesn't preclude a natural law from being investigated. But the more you learn, the more you realise how futile that would be.
Yeah, like you're talking David and Goliath times a trillion. But I just don't see it happening. What is the cause of what is? You're just not going to get there.
No, you're getting mixed up when you say what is the cause of what is. No, just because it's a good description of what is. The thing that you're describing in the what is, the law itself, is an occurrence. Why does my coffee go cold? That's the question, isn't it? When you're trying to figure out the cause of entropy, why does, in that specific example of an entropic effect, an exothermic effect, occur? Why?
You'll be able to describe it better. I don't doubt that. You know, now they can say high energy states move to low energy states. That those things will change. But
yeah, that's what happens. Why does the high energy state go to the low energy state? Why is there an exothermic reaction when I just sit a cup of coffee on the side? Why does that happen? What causes that to happen? And
but you're on the limit.
Through how better we could describe it happening and what actually happens, and that's all the law is. I get that. But what caused it to happen? I still want to know, just like I want to know what caused the sun to come up.
Do you think you can determine the cause of physical reality within physical reality?
You know how many times I've had this conversation, just not with you, John? About 5, with various different people who all go through the same motions that you're about to go through. No, I'm not that arrogant. But it doesn't mean I don't still question it or consider it possible to put through the method. It's just a phenomena at the end of the day, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, but you can put all sorts of things through the method that are pointless to do.
A defeatist?
No, I cheer anybody on that would try it, but it's, you know, maybe there is a David ready to take on that Goliath, but I just don't. Like, you know, like Adam said, a little plucky trier, I guess. That'd be all right.
Yeah, plucky trier.
I get it. I just want to make the distinction that when somebody says that, you know, the laws of nature are not science, at best, they could be put through the method as a phenomena. That statement's true. Or even if you're going to laugh at it and go, actually, upon a contamination, are you really suggesting that you can figure out the cause of entropy? Come on. And when I hear it, in basically those terms, dumbed down quite a lot from what I really get, because people give me a lot more respect than I probably deserve when I postulate this. But they'll do it in a lot more, you know, like John just did. Well, okay, yeah, no, I'm not arrogant. I'm fairly humble, and no, I don't think I'm going to figure out the cause of entropy. And once explained, the first time, not the fifth or sixth, I realise it's probably a futile exercise to suggest that you could. Doesn't mean that you couldn't put it in the method. That's all I'm saying. It's just a phenomena. Therefore, it can go through the method. There's no reason why someone couldn't suppose a cause of an entropic effect and then figure out why entropy occurred. Vary and manipulate a presumed cause of it and see if you can cause it to happen.
You make it
just
sound so
that-
simple.
That's where refracted points comes in. Is you've got to do it scientifically. You've got to step out, haven't you? You can get more detail, but if you're gonna go and actually vary the cause of entropy, you need to be at the programming level of the universe, don't you? Because all we ever do is notice ways in which entropy occurs, rates in which it can change, things that can affect it, but not actually what's making this equilibrium.
Right. The problem, yes, that's well put. The problem is it's something that's occurring always. There's not a chance to start it happening by varying and manipulating that which you assume caused it to start. By contrast, if you've got boiling water, and you go, I wonder what made that happen. Well, what's happening in that instance is something going from not boiling to boiling. Okay, well, in the case of entropy, it's not quite that cut and dry, is it? Because there's always in my coffee cup example, there's always the exothermic reaction. Anything that's of a high energy state is always going to go to the lower energy state, regardless. It's not like you can stop the process, vary something to start it happening. I cause the effect to happen because it's always happening. It's the law of nature. It's always occurring.
Yeah, but Donkey Kong will never leave the game, and he just can't understand why. But he will never leave the game.
Right. Can't stop it to start it. It's akin to when they attribute something that's not causally variable to a phenomena like the stars. Well, if they're going to call that science, which they do, then okay, if it's going to be formulated into the method, how do you vary that which you're supposing causes the effect? Well, if you're supposing that the Earth turning is causing the effect, how would you vary and manipulate that which you suppose causes the effect? You can't stop a claim that Earth is turning to cause that deflection. If you can't stop it, you can't vary it, so you can't validate it scientifically. Now, that's not to say that, by contrast, at a universe level, you couldn't stop the Earth, right? Maybe you could, if you were God, and therefore you'd have the ability to vary and manipulate that which you say is the cause of the effect of the stars moving in a heliocentric model. You'd have to be God to do it. Does that mean that you couldn't stop that occurrence? Well, in their model, at least, you've got things that aren't turning constantly. They might be falling around their body that they're orbiting, but they actually have I think the moon is an example of this, right? It's always got the same face facing us in their heliocentric orbital mechanics. Okay, so there is instances where stuff isn't turning. Maybe we could start the moon turning and have an observer on it to show the Coriolis drift that it observed from the moon when we started it turning. With some rockets attached to it. You know, I'm just saying that to bring it back to a farcical area of our fantasy life that we're all under at some stage, us flat earthers, I mean, not some of the audience maybe. Well, in that example, back in the art music, back when you were a believer in this crap, you could envisage sticking rockets on the moon and starting it spinning to cause the effect, therefore scientifically validating it. It'd be a major feat, but, you know, it's within the realms of the model and how it's described. Well, okay, now you get rid of that. You go, okay, so does that mean that by the same standards, there's a circumstance that I can show that entropy isn't occurring, even though it occurs always, so I can start it happening by varying something that causes the effect? Maybe. I doubt it. It's highly unlikely. Anyway, I'm done.
I saw an attempt by the Chinese to scientifically validate the movement of the stars. There was a science mag claim that this super dam the Chinese built had stacked up so much water that it had slowed the rotation of the Earth. That should be measurable by their claim, but that's the level you're acting on if you're talking about those sorts of things at a godly level. But there is actually a bullshit claim out there that they've partially done that.
There
By the
you
name
go.
of the damn.
Even then, I still don't think it's a great comparison to entropy. You know, there is like I say, if I can come up with an example of stopping rotation to stop the Coriolis drift that they say is a cause and effect mechanism, then that's easy peasy. Stopping entropy, though, it's a different kettle of fish altogether, really, isn't it?
Only life does that.
Well, that's what I was
That
getting
was the
ready
other
to.
thing I was going to say on your presentation. Thank you, Adam. When you talked about I've forgotten how you said it now. The not cause. How did you say it? Punctuated equilibrium, starting and stopping. How did you describe it? Huey?
No change.
No change. There it is. Right, isn't that a violation of the second law of thermodynamics, aka entropy?
I'd have to look at the actual tenets of punctuated equilibrium, but no change. Vaguely, yes. Would get it. I'm sure if we got into specifics, I could hammer it. Yeah.
If it was just 3 words, what's entropy?
Constant change.
Right. So if you say no change, would you not agree that that's a violation of the law of nature known as entropy or the second law of thermodynamics? No change means no entropy.
Yes. Generally speaking, you're correct. But that's my little take on it. I named it no change. That's not official. It's just a deduction of what they're trying to put forward.
Do you think many people, do they still teach evolution? Is it still actually a thing? It's one of those that you get shocked when you find out that is actually just something that the Western world is still subject to. Is that the case? They still teach this crap?
Yeah.
Yes. They're learning about it right now in school.
Wow. It's
Not
just
so
working
much
outside the taxonomic classification system, right? It's just a distortion of that convention.
Yeah, it's not taught because there isn't anything to actually teach. It's just a convention that's assumed and taxonomy strapped on to support it, isn't it? It can't be taught because what is it then? It's just change over time that yields. Yeah, but they don't really teach it. It just has to be assumed. A bit like a spinning ball Earth. One day you're just told this is fact and you move on from that fact. You don't question it.
Again, I'm
I
glad
think one of
you kept on the subject just because, again, what I see their description of evolution as is in complete violation of the second law of thermodynamics, because what you have in terms of decay or change over time is a dispersion, right? A move towards equilibrium when you're describing a gas. Okay. But when you're describing evolution, you're describing something improving, getting better. It's sort of arse about face as far as I'm concerned in terms of how you describe change over time with entropy versus change over time with evolution.
Evolution? They say that colloquially. That's not what it is. Follow?
Well, even the words punctuated equilibrium. Again, it seems like a bastardization of entropy, but it completely mirrors it. Am I saying really profound things? Is everyone thinking really deeply after something I've said? Wow.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the words you said, punctuated equilibrium. That statement just in itself, just inherently violates the second law of thermodynamics.
Yeah, precisely. That's what I was driving at.
Yep.
That's why I said it.
Yeah. You were on it, man. I'm getting heckled by a few different directions, and I'm trying to concentrate on what you're saying too. I'm a man. I can only do one thing at a time. Can't even do that good. All right. So people, stop heckling me. I'm trying to pay attention, but you are correct. Once I thought about it, the phrase itself, like I said, I'm not going to repeat it. You are correct.
Who are you getting heckled by? Anybody that's going to join in the
No,
discussion? We
no.
can do it to the panel. So, want me to go down the line?
Yes.
EJ Neo Shaman in the house. How you doing? Excellent. Well, it was very good to have you. Clearly not paying any attention to the show. Extremis, good to have you. How you doing?
He's on deaf and mute.
Taking him off.
He's still.
Oh, yeah,
He's
he can hear us. Okay. If he's not listening to the show on the live stream, then he definitely won't be hearing us. Click on mute just in case he joins in.
he's
not-
chat skanking hard.
Of course. Fair enough. Matt, is it Matt? How you doing? Good to have you. Any questions, comments? Don't be shy.
He's
No,
trying.
clearly not.
No, he's trying. I think Matt, jump back in again.
I'll leave him off mute if he wants to come back in and join the conversation.
Okay.
Do we count Neil as a member of the public still? What's his status these days? I'm only joking, Neil. Puckerell? How you doing? This is not going well this evening.
Everyone's
Chatty
shy.
lot, aren't they?
They're shy.
Okay. Moving on. Durkin. Good to have you. Can you hear us? Did you have anything you wanted to add? Please, God, say you have. You're the last one. There'll be no public participation.
I'll save your guys'
Yay!
day. What's going on?
Brilliant. What's going on is I don't have to change my semi-memorized outro about thanking the public participants, which is you.
Well, since I'm the only one talking, just gonna say keep up the good work. And again, another episode. I'm too fried to make a comment, but yeah, I'll try and think of a comment for next episode. So yeah, good job, guys.
Excellent. I'm so grateful for the public participation. Excellent. Well, that's pretty much it, QE. That's me working my way down the list.
Yep. Is there anyone from chat that wants to say anything? I usually don't go to chat, but yeah, I'll entertain it.
Hello?
Yeah, that's going to leave a large gaping hole for a couple seconds.
I can fill that hole.
I know you can.
There is a shout out I want to give because before we leave,
Go ahead.
and maybe a consideration of a spanner for you, and with that, a thanks for certainly for what I see. It was on Nathan's show. That's Divergent Droid. It's a good mod. So yeah, cheers, dude.
Oh yeah, he's been modding his butt off in your chats, Nathan.
Yes, he has. Yeah, very grateful I am too.
Is Owen alive?
I don't think so.
Much for Arwen.
Me?
There you go. Evening, dude.
Hello.
Arwen, you sound a little bit under the weather. What's wrong over there?
Nah, I'm just a bit toasty. Or what did the other guy say? Fried or?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that.
You've been imbibing.
What?
Pride means high.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was bear o'clock in the Netherlands now, Owen.
No, it's getting better. It is like 11 o'clock right now, but it's been a pretty hot day. But I'm having a little ice cream thingy now.
Is it cherry ice cream? Because we got a shout out to Incredibly Cherry. Again, no message, but super chat. Appreciate that.
No, I'm all out of cherry. I only got raspberry and peach.
Oh, we got
Did you
another
all
one.
have to
Davey Z. Now they're coming strong. Let's keep going. Thanks for what you do. And F the agents of chaos. Appreciate it, Davey Z.
I think it's reached the point within the circles we run in, it's not a debate anymore about the shape of Earth. That's done. Evolution's an embarrassment. Who would argue that? Maybe it's just this is what it's like when, there's nobody left to challenge you.
Right, we must not let victory defeat us.
Where'd Brian go? Did he drop again? He's been dropping late on shows. Maybe his phone ran out. Or
Irish things.
they called because they're having problems with the potato harvest.
That's it. More racist jokes.
All in love.
You got one new joiner, Matt.
Oh, Matt came back. Matt, any comments, questions, concerns? You're glowing, Matt, but nothing's coming through.
Mic issues, Matt.
All right, Nathan, I think that's all for today, unless you want to bring something up that we haven't gone over. What about Coriolis?
No. No, definitely not. We're not going to get into that unless you want 3 more hours.
No, I'm only messing. Go ahead, sir. Take us home.
Oh, well, with that, I'll say a massive, huge, enormous thank you, first and foremost, to all of the Ballbusters panels for making today's discussion possible. And, of course, the biggest thank you, of course, to today's public participation. Without it, the show wouldn't have been the same. So, really, really appreciate the public participation part of the show. More than ever, I have to say. There is no show for me to plug today, unfortunately. There's nothing going out. Was there something someone wanted to add? There's me.
No, I was laughing at the heavy sarcasm.
I'll add something to add. Just to plug, is that one what we've been discussing at the early part of the show, the chat with regards to dip correction. There's a couple of clips, a longer one. Maybe you pimp it in the chat and everything. It's well worthy of listening to because it just shows you where they're at and how all ends up the sextant and perhaps one's got them.
Okay, no, I'll plug that in the outro then. Okay, so over on Nathan Oakley 1980 channel, today's video that was released is called Globe Dip Pwned, PWNED, and check that out. That's what Adam's talking about. That was the discussion point for earlier in the show. So be here or be sphere on Nathan Oakley 1980 channel. Check that video out. I don't think there's anybody else to thank of, other than, of course, Quantum Eraser for making today's live show possible at all. I've been Nathan Oakley, and we will see you all on the next Ballbusters.